Chapter 6, The Aftermath. Although Sulu hadn't really spanked Melvin very hard, Melvin wailed and blubbered and carried on anyway. "You're a bad hamster," Melvin cried. "I never want to see you again as long as I live." Melvin ran out of the classroom, sobbing. The rest of the class, including Miss Ribble, followed him out, laughing and chanting, "Squishies, squishies, squishies." But George and Harold stayed behind to comfort the forgotten hamster. Aw, so they're very kind-hearted. "Don't feel bad, Sulu," said George. "Melvin is a real meanie." "Yeah," said Harold. "Do you want to come home with us? You can live up in our treehouse." So they're taking on a new pet. Sulu jumped onto Harold's shoulder and licked his face. Then he jumped over to George's shoulder and licked his face, too. "I think we've just adopted a bionic hamster," said Harold. So George tucked their new pal into his shirt pocket, and the three friends went off to lunch. Chapter 7, Mr. Krupp. About that very same time, the school principal, Mr. Krupp, came marching into the office in a particularly foul mood. Foul is not a good mood. He stopped beside Mrs. Anthrop's desk, huffing and puffing. He is out of shape. "Where's my coffee, Edith?" he shouted. "Get it yourself, Tubby," Miss Anthrop shouted back. She's not very kind either. Not all these characters show the Todd way, but they're funny. This isn't how we'd really act, huh? "I don't need your lip today, woman," Mr. Krupp growled. "I just want my coffee, and I want it now." "Well, get me a cup, too, while you're at it," Miss Anthrop growled back. "Ugh!" screamed Mr. Krupp, in frustration, as he grabbed a newspaper and headed for the faculty restroom. Miss Ribble was standing beside the restroom door, smiling and trying very hard not to laugh. Uh-oh, we know what she set up in there. "What are you looking at, Mr. Krupp?" snarled as he pushed his way past Miss Ribble and slammed the restroom door behind him. Inside the restroom, you could hear the faint sound of a belt buckle jingling, a zipper unzipping, some clothes rustling, and finally, what's your prediction? What happened in there? Squishy, squishy, squishy. "What the splat, splat!" screamed Mr. Krupp from inside the restroom. "I've got ketchup in my underwear!" In a few moments, the door of the faculty restroom flew open. "I'm going to get George and Harold for this!" Mr. Krupp screamed. "They didn't do it," laughed Mrs. Ribble. "I did. It's called a squishy. It's the latest fad." "Yeah, right. Very funny," said Mr. Krupp. "Now, where are those two kids? I just know they're responsible." Yeah, she tried to take the blame for him. It is kind of their fault. They didn't actually do it. She did it, but they taught her how. I don't think Miss Ribble would have known how to do a squishy if it hadn't been for George and Harold. As Mr. Krupp headed for the cafeteria, he noticed that he wasn't the only person to fall victim to the dreaded squishies. All through the hallway, angry first, second, third, fifth, and sixth graders were complaining about ketchup stains on their pants, socks, legs, and underwear. Mr. Krupp stormed into the cafeteria and headed for the fourth graders' table. "George and Harold," shouted Mr. Krupp, "I've got ketchup in my underwear because of you two, and so do half of the kids in this school." "We didn't do it," said Harold. "Yeah," said a few of the other fourth graders. "George and Harold are innocent." "Oh, no, they're not," said a voice from the other end of the table. It was Melvin Sneedly. Besides being the school brainiac, Melvin was also famous for being the school tattletale. "George and Harold taught everybody a trick today, where you put ketchup packets under a toilet seat and make it spray on people's legs," Melvin reported proudly. "Thank you, Melvin," said Mr. Krupp. He turned to George and Harold and pointed at the cafeteria door. "Mr. Beard and Mr. Hutchins, out!" So even though they didn't actually do it, they're going to get in trouble because they taught everyone else how to actually do it. Sometimes there's consequences to our behaviors, even if we don't make the bad choice. So I will see you back here for Chapter 8.